Good afternoon and welcome to BizTech's ASEAN Midday Market Watch. Our guest today is Stephen Innes, Chief Global Market Strategist at Axie. Steve, as always, great to have you on the show.
Great, thanks for having me on, Brian.
Now, before I get your insights, Steve, let's take a quick look and see how markets in the region are performing. We'll start with the SGX, which is down 0.05% at 3,208.18. The Bursa Malaysia is at 1,604.11. It's up 0.24%. Now, what's the shocker is the Nikkei is down just over 2% at 2.03% at 29,083.72. Shanghai Composite is up 0.29 at 3,487.60. The Hang Seng is flat at 29,105.73. The ASX 200 is down 0.63% at 7,021.40. And rounding up the numbers is the Kospi at 3,210.80. It's up 0.37%. What's happening in the Nikkei, Steve?
It's a good question. I just think it's another relook at Japan's place in the overall global scheme of things right now. I'm not sure how much this Olympic situation is weighing on overall risk or not, because that's always in the backdrop, whether they're going to go with the Olympics or not. But I think there was a lot of excitement that was really put on the recent run of economic data. I think to a great degree, the strengthening yen actually acts as a counter bridge to those strong exports, and that's possibly getting into the viewfinder. So I think there's just a multiple effects, but we can't escape the COVID situation in Japan. Let's face it, it's not good. That seems to be a country that's having difficulty clearing the virus, and the vaccine rollout's not really that great right now, which is a bit surprising because we thought it would be a lot stronger up there. But will the market look through this and move forward? Possibly, because the central banks around the world are going to remain ultimately dovish.
Now, Steve, let's move on to China. And China kept its 1-year loan prime rate and a 5-year rate unchanged at 3.85 and 4.65% respectively, which the market was expecting. So how is this going to impact currency markets?
Well, it's the one's just doing its contributing here to the reflation trade. I think the market right now is actually selling dollars on anticipation of catch-up plays globally, amid the Fed being extremely dovish. The yuan seems to be taking the lead on this chart right now, that along with the euro. So these seem to be the two main principles that people are buying right now. Euro is a more easier story to digest because it's a catch-up play on the vaccine rollouts. That was really hurting there. China's a little bit more complicated because we're really running into some, how should I say, some sort of plateauing economic data. But I think the fact here that the signal is still to keep monetary policy intact for longer than expected. I think this is sort of a read-through from the Fed's narrative, that the fact that they probably think now that they'll need to keep interest rates where they are for a little bit longer, and this is quite positive for the overall risk-on narrative.
Now, still on China, Li Bo, who is the deputy governor of the People's Bank of China, called Bitcoin today an investment alternative, which is a very big change, obviously, from 2017 when there was a clampdown on cryptos. Now, what should we be reading into this, and will this potentially bring more Chinese players into the crypto markets and therefore chase prices up further?
Yeah, we got a little bounce on that, I suspect, today, and I think the read-through is on two fronts here. One, it's using cryptos instead of the US dollar is a good idea, so they may be trying to encourage people to use cryptos as opposed to the US dollar, given the escalation in US China tensions. But I also think that it's quite intellectually challenging to actually have a bearish view on Bitcoins right now. You would just sound dumb, quite frankly, because how well they've been embraced of late. And I think this is part and parcel to the evolving narrative around the blockchain and the knock-on effects to Bitcoin. Not to mention that China's going down that street too, so they don't want to really push back to their digital ambitions in the near term.
Now, Steve, looking ahead this week, what data points and events should we be watching out for that could move markets?
The markets are left to their own volition this week because there's no Fed blackout period. right now markets have been very desensitive to strong U.S. economic data. I think that'll hold true, and I think the market is just concentrating on the earnings. I think we may have reached a peak optimism on earnings with a lot of celebratory buying going on in the past couple of weeks. So I'm going to keep an eye on earnings, but ultimately the focus on next week's Fed announcement, whether there's a taper suggestion or whether there's not a taper suggestion. That's what we're looking at right now.
Steve, as always, thank you very much for coming on the show and for your insights.
Thanks, Brian. Talk to you soon.
Now, we've been speaking to Stephen Ennis, Chief Global Market Strategist at AXI on BizTech's ASEAN Midday Market Watch. I'm Brian Fernandez. Check out www.biztech.asia for business and technology conversation.